welcome to the author chat with Ellen Hopkins and Ray Stoeve. My name is Lee, and I'm one of the volunteers on this panel. A few housekeeping things that I wanted to get over with before we get started. First, we are recording this so that people can watch it at a later time, so just so you're aware. Some of our volunteers are going to have their cameras on, but if everyone else in the audience could keep your cameras and microphones off, that would be much appreciated. You can write any questions that you have in the chat box, and our volunteers will be gathering them to share with the authors. So with all of that, I'd like to introduce our amazing authors. First, we have Ellen Hopkins. She is a Teen Book Festival veteran and a prolific author. Some of her most popular titles are her series Crank and her most recent novel, Closer to Nowhere. A few fun facts: she published her first poem when she was 9, wrote some children's nonfiction before she started writing novels, so she really has written quite a lot. And then she also loves to bake homemade bread and cinnamon rolls, which just sounds delicious right now. And we also have Ray Stoeve, who this is their first time at TBF, and we are so happy to have them. Thank you. Ray just published their first young adult novel, Between Perfect and Real, just a few weeks ago. So congratulations, Ray. Yeah, it's right on their bookshelf. I started it. It's amazing so far.
Thank you.
You're welcome. They've also created a database to track young adult and middle ground books by trans authors about trans characters, which I think is just amazing. And they love gardening and hiking around their home in the Pacific Northwest. So thank you both for being here. Welcome.
Yeah, we're on Pacific time, so we had to get up really early.
Oh.
Yes. It's nice though. It's so sunny here.
Oh, good. All right. So I guess to get started, I have some questions. So what made you guys decide to write? You know, what kind of drew you to this career path?
After you, my friend.
Oh, great. Well, I think author was the first career that I ever wanted as a kid. You know, when people are like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I was a really avid reader. I would read all the time. My family didn't have a TV until I was 12, so that was one of my main forms of entertainment. I don't know, I've always been writing. Like, I've always wanted to make up stories and like write little stories since I was a kid. And it wasn't until my late 20s that I realized that, oh, like I can actually pursue this as my life's work. There's just like so much messaging when you're growing up about needing to like find a career and like find a real job, and like the arts aren't really always considered to be real work. I don't know, I just love, I love telling stories, and I love exploring like my experiences through fiction. And I don't know, that's not a very articulate answer, but that's what I've got.
I've been writing since I figured out how to put words on paper. You know, I was just one of those prolific, like, you know, it's like we get assignments and it would be like, write a paragraph, and then I would turn in, you know, a page or something, and everybody show up, you know. It's like, but I always enjoyed painting pictures with words, I guess, because I'm not much in the way of an artist that way. I have friends who can draw, but writing for a living was like, for me, I was kind of focused on journalism right up through college. And then I took this giant detour in my 20s that took me away from writing for a while. I mean, I was always writing. So I'd have I had drawers of legal pads with stuff scribbled on them. It made no sense at all, but I was always writing, even through this kind of, in my 20s, I was running my own businesses. So I was doing that and raising kids. which, you know, and I've been raising kids now for a long time, but kids in your house, it inspires your writing, but it also like takes away from your writing time. You're creative, you're like, and be like, so, but having kids also was what inspired me to get into writing for young people instead of writing journalistically or in some other fashion. So like I originally thought I was going to write picture books, which is not my skill set at all. It's like entire story arcs in 500 words. No. I don't got that down, but having kids here is definitely is what inspired me to write for in the kidlit area, and then with all the stuff I've experienced with them, it's a never-ending supply of inspiration. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. Let's see. Here's a tough question. Are there any topics that either of you will never write about?
I always joke necrophilia and, you know, bestiality probably, but other than that, probably that's about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it depends on like how the topic is addressed in the book. I think that I would never try to write outside my own experience, you know, as far as main characters go. Just because I think that like, I don't have the range, you know, to tell certain stories. And given like the history of publishing, it's time for like people to be able to tell their own stories instead of being, you know, represented and misrepresented by other people. And that's another of the reasons that I'm drawn to YA is being able to like write trans characters and non-binary characters from an authentic place. I think that I tend not to gravitate toward like probably like graphically violent content. That's not really my jam. But I do, you know, between Perfect and Real and then my second novel, both explore heavier themes. So I don't know. And I have like a really long career, hopefully, ahead of me. So I guess we'll find out.
I know I don't think I'd actually probably delve into science fiction, which is, it takes, the science end of that would be too much research for me. Like anything that takes like any kind of huge amounts of research, I get lost in the research. So then my writing gets like, I'm like, wait, I gotta get back to the writing. Like I'm writing, it's a near future. It's why I'm on this final revision for it. And it's even that, which is, it's a contemporary world, but it's just near future. And that has been a little bit more difficult world building wise for me. But I think I've got it now. This book I've been writing for, this is the one that's taken me the longest to write out of anything I've ever written in my life. So, and it's almost ready to go in. So I'm looking forward to getting it off my computer.
Yeah.
Amazing. All right. What do you think are some of the skills or experiences that have made you a great writer?
Ellen, I'm happy for you to go first.
Well, I mean, I've inhabited this earth now like more than 6 decades, so I've lived a lot of different lifetimes in that time. And I think it's, you know, people always go like, so if you could change anything about what you know, mistakes you made when you were young, what would you do? And, you know, and I think about it and it's like every single bad part of my life, every single mistake I made led me here. So I kind of am a fatalist in a way that I believe that you know, I have a strange relationship with the spiritual world, but I do believe one exists. And I do think that I've been kind of directed to writing for young people because I think I'm able to open up conversations that otherwise might not have been open between parents and teachers and kids and whatever. I think I'm very good at that. So the psychological part of that stuff always interests me, and I studied psychology and I studied sociology, and those things that that make people that make us human. That's what I think I'm good at, is delving into that. That's why I wouldn't write science fiction, because robots, I don't know about robots, but I think I'm just very good at being able to write the human landscape in a very honest way. And I think that's probably my biggest strength.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I feel like I've always been someone who is a highly observational person, and I've spent a lot of my life watching the people around me, and trying to understand myself and other people and why people do what they do. And I think that I try and bring that to my writing too, with any character. Like, why is this character doing what they're doing? What is their wounding? Like, what are the life experiences that are making them act the way that they're acting? And then I think I have the ability, or I have developed the ability to not be precious about my work. And Between Perfect and Real really taught me a lot of that, because I did 2 total rewrites of the entire story from beginning to end, and losing like big chunks along the way, doing like a total like point of view overhaul, helped me just learn to be open to like whatever is in service of the story, and not get too caught up in like, oh, but I love this line of dialogue, or like, oh, this, this scene is so sweet. So I think, yeah, the ability to just be like, okay, I'm in service of the story. It's not about my ego, and go from there.
Yeah, I've learned ego, there's really very little place in this space for ego. It's always going to be, there's always going to be something else, something new, something that changes. And again, this book that I've been revising, it's the same thing that I've, one thing I wrote it in prose. I wrote it as omniscient, and I'm not good at that. I'm much better at first person in verse, which is what this is my 3rd editor on the project. So over the space of writing this book, I've worked with 3 different editors, all of whom had different visions. And that is really hard. I do not recommend that at all. It's like, so then you have to get back to like, what do I believe about the book, And so that it's been a huge learning experience for me. But like my last editor, who's actually also pretty high up in SNS children's publishing, he's like, no, you got to put it in verse. And so I'm taking omniscient with 2 point of view characters and doing 4 point of view characters in verse. So it's been quite the revision. Yeah.
That's
but I also learned that, how much language, when you write prose, it's easy to get caught up in descriptions and language and all that stuff. In verse, not so much. So when I'm like distilling what I wrote, all these paragraphs, into like a couple of stanzas or whatever, I'm like, we really didn't need all those words.
Yes. Truly killing your darlings.
We have a question from the chat. How do you come up with the inspirations for your book? And I think you started talking a little bit about that. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah.
Inspiration's like, it's like outside, it's like in the living room, it's like in the bathroom, it's like pretty much everywhere, And one thing I really, really miss about being out, like doing these things for real, is the one-on-one with readers, that share stories and talk to you about what's important to them. See, like here, we have everybody behind their screens, and so they can ask questions, but it's not the same thing as like having a conversation or a dialogue and having them share what's important to them. And so I miss school visits. Hey, I'm ready for school visits, you guys. Especially in a non-virtual space, because this is fine. I mean, I love, just talking, but because I can talk all day, obviously, but that having them in your sphere, I guess, and really tapping into their energy and what's going on with them, and the observant stuff, right? So like, you know, you're in a school, you can just watch what's going on in the school and listen to like what's important to these kids walking down the hall that aren't even talking to you, but just to understand what's important to them in that space, I think is huge. So that's what I want to get back to, that kind of inspiration, but yeah.
Yeah, being able to be out in the world is definitely conducive to the creative process. I think for me, my work so far has been inspired by my personal experience. You know, Dean's story is not autobiography by any means, but a lot of the, you know, feelings or the general experiences of Dean were drawn from my own experience. And I remember very acutely what it was like to be a teenager. And then I've also, I spent about 5 years or so working in education in various positions, and you know, like you're saying, Ellen, just like observing kids and listening to kids talk and teens talk and watching them interact. And, you know, I think one thing I try to do now is take in a lot of media that I know that teens are watching. So like I watch a lot of TikTok and try to stay up on like artists that are popular now. It's very easy for me to just like go back to like the same comfort artists over and over, like music that I listen to, but just trying to pay attention to like what is happening now, because like I have an experience that I remember, but things are very different now, and for teens, and especially for queer and trans teens in some ways, not in other ways. So yeah, I try to mix like drawing on my personal experience and like what I wish I would have seen represented in fiction, whether it be like stories about what it's like to be queer and trans, or just other experiences of like, you know, family circumstances or friendships and things like that, with also like trying to have it be relevant to what teens' lives like are now. Teens' lives are like now.
Like you're so far away from that.
I know, right? When I was working in ed, once a parent thought that I was one of the 8th graders when I was I think at that time I was 28. And I was like, no, I just discovered the fountain of youth. It's called being trans.
The challenges.
Yes.
So we have another question. Do you have any writing rituals?
Yeah. I'll jump on this one first. I tend to, when I'm going into my writing rhythm tends to be working in chunks. So I'll like kind of sit down and like really work on, you know, edits or whatever like the draft is for like an intense chunk of time, and then I send it off, and then I need to sort of just like take a break and let it like be underground for a while, and I find that I just work better that way. But when I do sit down to write, I often like, here where I live now, I have a really nice like desk in the corner, and so I like to just like come in my room. I like to have tea, even if I only drink, like the joke that some of my friends have is that I only drink half of my tea ever. So there's just like a half drunk cup of tea like sitting around. And I usually have a playlist that I've made for a manuscript. And so I like to just put on my headphones, put on the playlist, and that just becomes sort of the background noise or atmosphere of the manuscript for me. And then I just start writing. Like it's that easy. Or just like stare at the page for
I have
like
a nice office too, but man, it's never quiet around here. It's we were joking about this yesterday. I was doing an interview, and it was like, you know, even with the lockdown stuff, you know, it just feels like it's never quiet, you know. It's like there's always I mean, I've got a new puppy, she's 8 months, and she's usually I've got people puppy sitting her so she doesn't run around in circles up here like banging in the door and stuff. But for me, the best writing time for me is early in the morning, like before people get up and the dogs get up and stuff. So I'm up by 5 every day anyway. So yeah, I joke that I got up at 5 for you guys, but I get up at 5 every day. So you're not that special. Just kidding. But no, that early morning time is really good for me. I'm overseeing distance learning for 3 kids this year. So they're going back to school next year. So that I'll be back into more of a flow then, because I have to, like, they come in the door at a certain time and then I got to check their teams for them and I got to scan stuff and put it in. And so I've been doing a lot of kind of busy work for that and it does take away from, because you have to, I mean for me, I need to like be able to focus and get into like a space of time. So if I don't do it early or like when they go to lunch or whatever, it gets lost right now. But we only got a couple more weeks and I'm really looking forward to more me writing time without the interruption. It's been difficult, I'll say that. I don't do playlists, so I don't listen to music like I know a lot of people do. For me, I need actually the quiet to be able to get into the headspace, and especially when I'm writing multiple viewpoints, because I have to be able to change headspace, you know what I mean?
That would be
So
really
if I was playing one music for one person, then I'd have to like move over to play something else for somebody. Like one of the characters I'm writing is all into country, and I don't do country very often, so.
I can help you with that if you need a playlist for country music.
It's pretty cool to think of a playlist sort of that inspires the book or kind of goes along with the book. I've seen some folks do that, or some reviewers. I'm on Bookstagram a lot. A lot of folks will do those kind of inspirational things. That's pretty cool to think about. I know you talked a little bit about this, but we do have a question. When did you first realize you wanted to be a writer?
I mean, elementary school, but then you also like the next year you're like, well, maybe I want to be a pop star, and then the next year you're like, well, Michelle Kwan is really cool, maybe I want to be an ice skater. So I think it was like realizing over the course of my life up until this point, and then actually committing, I think I was 25.
Yeah, I think I was, by the time I really made it a point of trying to earn money doing it, I think I was 29 or 30 about the same time. So, and realizing also that there are other ways, this is something for young writers out there, for teachers that are, working with young writers. There are other ways of, if being a writer as a career to make a living is what you're after, fiction is not necessarily the way to do it. There are a lot of things you can do, and even while you're writing fiction on the side, which is what I did when I was freelancing. So I was a freelance journalist for a number of years, writing fiction on the side or poetry on the side. I was writing children's nonfiction. Like nonfiction, there will always be a market for good nonfiction with good voice, because we learn stuff every day, right? So like something that was relevant to space travel in the 60s is obviously not Elon Musk going to Mars, you know what I mean? So there will always be space there for that. I mean, there's also, ad copy and other things you can do, but it is possible. So, and I know a lot of parents like, you can't make money. If you want to do that, if that's what you want to do, go for it. You can always go back to fall back on something else later. Go for it though,
Yeah, I finished a revision of Between Perfect and Real on my phone on my hour-long bus commute to work for a year. So,
I don't know how anybody can write on a phone. Well, I can't. I hate little screens anyway. So it
wasn't ideal.
I don't even do email on them. Like when I travel, I usually take an iPad for email and stuff, because I need at least that big a screen. Those screens, well, my eyes aren't what they used to be either. So.
I have a question from one of our teens. Ray said that they've used different measures to understand kids today, like TikTok, so that they can accurately showcase them in their books. What's your process like, and how do they incorporate that into your books?
I mean, I do, I watch TikToks in general for fun, not just to keep up on what the teens are doing. I don't know. I've always been like a user of technology. I think it was a way that I like found community and like a way to express myself when I was a kid and when we like first got internet, which then was dial up, which I know you have no idea what that means. But you know, there was a lot of weird noises, and then the internet would start and it would be very, very slow. But and so I think like with every new kind of like social media tech like thing that has come along, I've been curious about it, and I've like, you know, usually been one of the first people in my group of friends to make an account and start using it and try to figure out how it works, you know, with varying degrees of success and interest. But I think yeah, when I put it into my books, I try not to overuse it, but rather do it in a way that's organic, you know, like for Dean, I didn't have really the benefit. Trans YouTube was just starting to be a thing when I started questioning my gender and like when I was 19. But I knew by the time I really started writing BPAR that YouTube was a huge thing, and that all the like teens that I was working with were not really watching TV, they were watching YouTube. And so the main way that Dean is accessing information and perspectives about transition is through YouTube and through, you know, Instagram. And that is a theme that's going to carry through in my other books too. If there's like a reason for a teen in my book to be shown using social media, I'm going to try and organically input the social media that is like most probably recent, or the one that is like people are starting to adopt. And it's an interesting thing because some people seem to be frustrated with mentions of like, you know, Billie Eilish or, you know, TikTok or YouTube in books and say that it dates books. But if you read older novels, you know, the first page of The Outsiders, he's coming out of a movie with I think James Dean in it. And that's a dated technological reference. So I feel like using it in a way that is like supportive and organic to the text, but not just peppering it in wherever possible, because that is not necessarily like supportive of the story, if that makes sense.
And there is a danger to that, you know, to a point. So, because platforms, you know, 20 years ago, Facebook was like big and fresh, right? And so, and Instagram, like YouTube has been there for a long time, and I don't think it's going anywhere, you know. But like, I wouldn't put a Facebook reference in a book now, not at least not in a teen book. Well, the only people on Facebook are all us old people. So there is a slight danger to that. Also, like things like, so like I pulled out this novel that I wrote a long time ago. I don't know if you guys remember, but about maybe 5 years ago now, in California, they found this girl who had been kidnapped as a young girl, and she was like in her 20s now, and she'd been kept in a tent in a backyard, right, in this place in California, J.C. Lee Dugard, right? And so I was a freelance journalist at Tahoe when she was kidnapped. So I wrote a novel based on that kidnapping. And so I went to pull it out when they found her, because I'm like, oh, I should pull this out and have a look at it. First of all, it was on floppy disks. So then I had to have the, like all that data, all that stuff pulled off there, came out with all these little numbers and stuff, you know. But not only that, but I mean, they were stopping at phone booths to make phone calls, and, you know, it was like, and that wasn't even that long ago. So it's like, even like phone references from books are like, what? Kids are like, what's a phone booth? You know, I don't know what that is. What is that thing over there? So there is a slight danger to that, but also, and we were just talking yesterday, like books set in the 1990s are now considered historical fiction. Like, what? Okay. I think I'm going to do a 70s book just because I lived it. You know?
Yes.
As a teen, I lived the 70s, so probably should do a historical fiction. You know, I'm like, oh, I can't do historical fiction, too much research. Oh no, I did the research.
Yes.
But no, the technology thing it's interesting, and those platforms do change. Like when I first started writing, like when Crank came out, the only social media out there was MySpace. And it helped me build my career because I was able to, it was a platform where I could have, readers could come to me through messaging and I could go back to them. Like we could speak through messaging, you know, and it was so important to them to be able to do that. And so coming into social media at that stage, who knew that it was going to blow up like this? It's kind of amazing and kind of scary in a lot of ways too, especially when you're raising kids, you know, it's like, okay, I guess we'll give that a try and see what happens, you know?
Totally. Yeah, MySpace was my first social media too, and LiveJournal. Shout out.
And MySpace was actually, it got weird, but it was a pretty cool platform there for a long time. It really was.
Yeah.
I'm curious, this is a question from a not teen, me. As you guys are talking about social media, I'm thinking about over the last few months, how many things have come, especially like on Twitter, you know, how it seems like more recently, let's say the last 20 years, authors are really seen much more as human beings and people. And that really seems driven a lot by social media and having a presence there and all of those things. And I'm wondering if it feels like that has an impact on your writing or on your professional face or how you interact with your readers.
Yeah, it definitely does. The Instagram that I have now, that's sort of my public, like professional Instagram, started as my personal. And for a long time, I would share really openly, you know, but in the past few years, and then like having done my own, you know, self work and stuff too, I realized that I did in fact want and need some boundaries around like how I share and what I share. And so there are lots of parts of my life that don't make it onto Instagram and don't make it onto Twitter. It's definitely like that difference of the way that authors are seen. You know, when I was a kid, authors were like these distant, mythical figures, totally unreachable, just like, you know, and now, you know, even like I'm a debut author, you know, I'm not like Ellen Hopkins level. But like even the like amount of exposure that I do have, it can feel very anxiety inducing sometimes, because I'm just a person, and like I wrote Between Perfect and Real as a gift, and I'm so grateful for the like impact that it's had and for people loving it, you know, so far in the last 2.5 weeks. But sometimes it's overwhelming, because yeah, I do want to be seen as a human being who, like, I'm not always on Twitter because I can't be for my mental health, and same with Instagram. So
Twitter can be a pretty mean space though. I mean, because it's like hit and run, you know what I mean?
yeah,
For me,
it's so fast, and it's very, there's like so much to absorb, and
all you can just say one wrong thing, and you know, and it can be taken wrong or whatever. And man, people are happy to run with that, you know. So I've kind of like Instagram. I love it, but I hate it because I hate taking pictures of me. I mean, I just do. So my Instagram is, you can see where I live, you can see my dogs, my kids, my flowers, whatever. Once in a while, you get one of me because it's like, ooh. Close. But what I do love over there, I like doing lives every now and again because those are fun and people can come in randomly, and I like that. Twitter, and for me, I'm a pretty politically charged animal, and if you guys follow me on Twitter, you know that Twitter is also a space where you get news quickly, and so for me, that's kind of like, I mean, I always go and look deeper if it's something that interests me, but you can get fast news hits and see stuff that's happening like right now everywhere, like fast, and I like it for that. But I tend to have a big mouth and like say things sometimes. I'm pretty politically charged piece. So the last 4 years have been interesting. I'll put it that way. And I think, and the book, the near future I'm writing, and really, it really takes that into consideration, how close we came to losing democracy in this country, and we're still right there. And so I think it's really important that we, like, for me, it's important that I use my voice. And yeah, I've lost readers for sure. I've also gained readers in that space, because I just feel like, look, I'm an author, I'm a writer. I need to be able to use my voice. The First Amendment to me is much more important than the Second, okay? And it's just, I mean, they're all equal, but the idea that we could be silenced, that journalists can be silenced, that's scary. That the internet could be, you know, that even these platforms that are so huge that, like, I'm not really great with people making billions of dollars off of, you know, building a platform, but okay, they did it, so good for that. So, but the idea that the government can come in and tell them what they can or can't do, that's very concerning. And I think all of us in this space, librarians, teachers, kids, all of us should be very concerned about that.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that, Ellen. We are in the last 5 minutes of this session already, so I just wanted to let everybody know that we're going to wrap up soon and have one last question. So kind of broad one, but what would you say is your favorite thing about being a writer?
I get to do something I love for work, like every day. I'm still, it's funny, something about like Between Perfect and Real coming out made me feel for real, like it was my job now. Like I knew that it was, and I tried to treat it as such from an early point. But having a book come out and then the next week getting edits back for your second one, and you're like, oh, okay, back to work, back to the desk. Like, this is my job. It's like, it's amazing to me. And then of course also like the chance to like, you know, to have people tell me that they feel seen by my book, and knowing that I put so much of myself into it, which can feel very exposing at times, but also in the same way, like I feel seen by you feeling seen through my experience. And so it feels like this channel of being able to be humans together. And it's really beautiful.
I mean, there's travel, there's setting your own hours, there's, I mean, writing's always been a happy space. So yeah, to be able to get paid to be in a happy space, I guess that's pretty cool. But also I've made a lot of friends that I would not have had, and young friends and older friends and librarians and teachers and readers. And you know, sometimes you'll have readers that come to like everything you do. Like if I go to Texas, you know, this one young reader, she would come to anything I did, even if she had to go all the way across Texas, which is a pretty big state. But to make friends even in that space, it's like crazy. And I've made author friends, like I have new ones, which is always good to like make new author friends, but to be able to spend time with people that you care about, and to be able to make a positive difference in young lives. I think for me, there's a great satisfaction in that. And I do think that in my books, which also, you know, they deal with some pretty hard subject matter, but they help people, and that's important. And being able to help people that's why we're here, right?
Wonderful. Thank you both so much for sharing all of your thoughts and feelings with us today. It's been great to get to know you guys a bit better. Thank you to everyone who showed up to listen to Ellen and Ray, and make sure that you guys check out all of our awesome panels that are coming up. We also have Hippocampo, which is selling books both by Ray and Ellen, as well as our other authors. And we still have merchandise on our website. So thank you again for joining us.
They're signed too. The books are signed.
Yes, that's right. We have book plates at Hippocampo. So make sure that you grab those. There's a limited supply. Yeah,
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much. Also, I've been live tweeting several of your things you've said in case you want to check that out.
Retweet.
Twitter's a rotten space.
It really is. You really have to curate it. So you have to pay block, your blocking has to be really strong on Twitter. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much.